You know a dream's like a vessel, ever turning as it flows. I'm Garth Brooks now. I've already gotten over 100 looks on the YouTube. And my boy thought it was because I started with Britney Spears. Sang a little Britney Spears, and then he played it for me on the YouTube, and that was pretty embarrassing. So somebody should have stopped me pretty quick there. So this is a little bit different, maybe not really, I don't know, I wouldn't call it even a Bible class, but it's just kind of interesting to me. Maybe it'd be interesting to you. Matter of fact, the full disclosure is, well, number one, Marvin Phillips, Jim McGuigan, Jeff Walling was the man who did the original. When I saw it, I'm talking about at Tulsa 50 years ago, Jeff Walling did a lesson like this with the monkey. He used the animals, and it blew me away. And so that's why I've done it many times at our church, but just he is the man on stuff like that. I love Jeff Walling. But I wanted to, well, I'm not going to say this again. In case you weren't here earlier, I will say that anytime you're asked to do a parenting class, it's just kind of daunting. But I said yes. We need to learn. This lesson is kind of neat. I think when I look at people, like in this room, or at my church, or in my house, on learning how to read people and learning how to understand people, where they're coming from. So when I see a face like this, I don't know what you think. You know, I think about church stuff. Church stuff is usually what I'm thinking about, and I'm thinking, you want me to teach the 2- and 3-year-olds? That's kind of the look. It's kind of the look that gives me, or I get when I ask someone to do that. And I see that, and I think, I've seen that guy in our elders meeting, I think. We're over budget by how much? And this one we hear routinely on Wednesday nights if they have sauerkraut because someone's always griping about our Wednesday night. We have a Wednesday night meal every Wednesday night. Do y'all do that too? Let me just suggest, if you don't do that, that's a good thing to do. Our attendance shot straight up. Doing a Wednesday night meal before, people come to eat. And it's good. Oh, this one, I don't know when I see this, I think I love a cappella. Did y'all listen to a cappella like I did growing up? Oh, there's nothing better in this world than Keith Lancaster and a cappella, which my kids were raised on too. And this one a little bit tougher. The kids are off to college. Yeah, we're fired up, aren't we? We're excited. You know, I don't know. Empty nest. I don't know how many of you have empty nests, but it's, secretly it's kind of awesome. But yeah, it is a little bit. What do? We just look at each other and talk about our kids the whole time they're gone. And this one is just if you get a hold of the thermostat at the church. How many are cold in here right now? Yeah, some of you are. And I think it's just burning hot in this building. But that's a big fight at our church. This one I just put in because what's the countdown for Key? I've been getting that. I don't know if y'all been getting that like I have. I get the email every day. Ethan's asking me, how many hours until Key? But now, here we are. It's time. Thank you for Key. Lane, I'm looking at some of you guys. Thank you. What a neat idea to do something like this. I know it's the first one, and it's already awesome. I start with this picture. It's my family at one point in time, and that was a good day. That was a good day. Remember that day. That was a good day. And I'm going to show you that picture here in a little while after we talk about kind of reading our families to just give you an idea. 80% of conflict is predictable based on personality types. Have you ever heard that before? It's very, we shouldn't be shocked sometimes if people clash or if you clash. Maybe it bothers you. I've noticed at my own church, there are certain people I I struggle with, I have trouble with, and then others I get along real well with. And when you start looking at some of these personality types, you find a lot of it has to do with that. It's kind of interesting. It's a verse we all know. This is the one we use, Church of Christ verse, classic. You had to memorize this in grade school if you were in a Church of Christ. Let us not give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, because you need to be at church. Church attendance, that's the most important thing. But, we tend to forget the verses all around this one, like the one right before. And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds. We kind of forget that. And we know we need to be at church, but we kind of forget some of that. And then it finishes with, but let us encourage one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. And so that verse, even though I do believe in church attendance, don't miss the importance of encouraging each other, which includes your family and your kids and your spouse, to be an encouragement. This is the golden rule. What is the golden rule? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And so sometimes I think we treat people, we encourage people, and not just encourage, we just deal with people the way we would want to be dealt with. And so I've had trouble sometimes dealing with people, like in an elders meeting or in some sort of VBS committee meeting or something. And I think part of the reason is rooted in I'm wanting them to deal with me the way I would deal with them. I'm treating them the way I want to be treated. And even though that is the good for the golden rule, there's some other verses that kind of point at a different way of dealing with people. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths. Now we know what that means, right? Don't cuss, okay? That's the way we always learn that. I don't know that that's what he had in mind, though, if you read the rest of the verse. But instead, only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. According to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. And so as we deal with people, we need to figure out what their needs are. It may not be the way I want to be treated, but it's the way they want to be treated or they want to be dealt with. I keep thinking and talking in church terms, but I really want you to think about it in family terms and dealing with your own family. In fact, God has arranged the parts in the body, every one of them, just as He wanted them to be. If they were all one part, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, but the one body. So we're all different. We're all different parts. We're not supposed to be the same. The church works better. The family works better. Really, even your workplace works better if you have different people with different strengths and weaknesses coming together. I watched I don't know how many of you all have heard of Dr. Kevin Lehman. I think the guy is cool, really cool. He's a neat dude. But I saw him on one of the morning shows one time. I don't remember which one it was. And he's had these people sitting down. He had these sisters, actually. It was like 3 or 4 sisters. And he said, let me tell you about yourself. And then he asked them, when were you? I was firstborn, I was secondborn, I was third. So then he points at the one who was, middleborn. He said, let me guess, out of the 3 of you, you were the most successful in competitive team sports. And I mean, all 3 of them were just like, oh, wow, he's right. This one played college ball. This was all this. And then he said, and I would think, too, if I asked you right now, you probably live furthest away from your parents. Other 2 probably live a lot closer. And they were all just, yeah, she lives in California. The other 2 live in Detroit, And then he would go to another one, and he would say something about her. Well, I got a feeling you've probably been married the longest, and then I'm like, yeah. I mean, this dude was like the mentalist, telling them all about their life. And I thought, okay, that's neat. He wrote the book on birth order, and it's called the Birth Order book. And I've got that book. He wasn't the first to talk about it. Another guy, Alfred Adler. I realize this is somewhat boring, dry stuff, but just for a second, I like it. It's interesting. There was a guy named Alfred Adler in the early 1900s, and he really focused on the importance of birth order. And the oldest were leaders. Now, how many of you were firstborn in the room right now? How many of you are the babies of the family? Okay. Any only children in the room? It's a little more rare. Are y'all married? 2 only children got married? Wow. That's a power struggle waiting to happen right there. I forgot. Any middleborns? Yeah, easy to forget, right? Because the middleborns always get forgotten because they're lost in the shuffle. See, if these are true, the oldest in the family is usually much more responsible. Usually end up being leaders wherever they are, wherever they work. They're usually a little bit more mature, a little bit more organized, tend to be list makers, things like that. The middle child tends to be more independent, can be somewhat of a peacemaker, especially when the family gets together. Hey, let's not fight. Usually the one who tries to stop an argument. But it's fiercely competitive, especially outside the home in sports. And then the youngest is usually a little bit manipulative and a little bit of a charmer and a people person. And as I read those, I don't know what you thought, if you thought it described you, but I know in my own life, yeah, those are spot on. For a lot of families I know, for my own, for my kids, I think these things they do tend to work a lot. But when you look at the reasoning why, it's mostly nurture. Have you ever heard of nature versus nurture? Nature's kind of the way you're born. Nurture is affected by how you're raised. That's why they can take twins, and if they get separated and they get ones with one family, ones with another, they might actually turn out completely different, though their genetics may be much the same the way they were raised. We know this to be true. And most of this birth order thing is nurture. You know, the parents with the oldest child, they've never had kids before. They're much more nervous. You know this to be the case if you've had kids. They're much more worried about them. They're much more focused on them. They're much more demanding of them. And then they have other kids. And so now the oldest has to take a little bit more of a, hey, take care of your brother. Hey, you watch your little brother. Hey, you do this. And they take a little more responsibility, which is why they usually grow up that way. The middle child's usually fighting for attention. The oldest kid gets a lot of the attention because they're the oldest, and then the youngest, the baby, always gets too much attention. And so that middle child is usually caught trying to fight for attention. And then the youngest, the adults by then are tired. They've already had a couple of kids. They're not really worried anymore. That kid can fall down or eat tacks or anything. They're just letting him, whatever, they'll be all right. They'll make it okay. And so that kid is not much, he's not looked at a lot, they're not real strict on that kid. And the kid is so used to everybody paying attention to him, they tend to be charming, and they really manipulate to get their way. And I think that's nurture. It's not what they were born with. And of course, you may have heard some of that stuff and thought, well, you didn't describe me. But there are so many other factors. Are you a male or a female? That's a big factor. You got to include that in just about everything. Males react differently than females do in a lot of different cases. Or like some middle child may say, no, I got treated so good in this way, but then you find out they got 2 older sisters and 2 younger sisters, and they're the only male in the bunch. Well, they're going to get treated differently. So a lot of this nurture stuff. So when we look at nature, this is a little bit older. This is Hippocrates. Matter of fact, doctors today take an oath. Do y'all know what that oath is called? It's the Hippocratic Oath. And it's based on this dude. He lived 2,400 years ago. I mean, it's 400 BC. And he was one of the first fathers of medicine in Greece. And he believed that your character traits were based on these four humors, the four fluids in the body. And blood, yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm. Of course, he's going from stuff he saw coming out of people, and it's very interesting. Was he right, by the way? No, he was not. Okay, that has nothing to do with it. But he was on to something. And he did find that people had a tendency to act a certain way. You may have heard of the Myers-Briggs test. Catherine Briggs and her daughter, Isabel Briggs-Myers, came up with this test. How many of you have taken a Myers-Briggs before? Yeah, most people have. A lot of people in work settings will have to take one. And a company will use that to kind of help make people, I don't know, they'll have team meetings where they'll try to figure out how everybody can get along and work better together. Isabel Briggs-Myers said the understanding of type can make your perceptions clearer, your judgment sounder, your life closer to your heart's desire. To figure out what you are, what you're like, what your tendencies are, and to figure out what people around you are. That's sort of the key to all of this. But I look at the INTJ, INTJ, PNJT, a lot of letters. That looks very complicated to me, and that's why that's why the zoo is so much easier to understand. So we're going to have a line going up and down, and this line is going to represent thinking speed. Are you a fast thinker, or are you a slow thinker? Now, fast thinker does not necessarily mean smarter, right? You can be stupid really quick, can't you? We know that. As a matter of fact, in many cases, we consider the smarter person to be the person who stops and thinks about it for a second. The person who's rash tends to not be thought of. But yeah, so if you're a fast thinker, just raise your hands if you're if you think you're more of a fast thinker. You're moving quick, you're figuring it out, you're tired of me talking about this already. Judd, move on, show us an animal. Yeah, you're thinking that right now. But raise your hand if you're a slow thinker. Yeah, see, those hands don't usually come up very high. They're usually thinking, I'm not sure if I'm a slow thinker. I think I'd like to just consider that. I'm not sure I know what you mean, Judd. Why don't you explain that? That's your slow thinker. The line on the right and left, are you a warm person or are you a cold person? Warm people are people who hug you. They're touchers. And they're people. And some of you in here are warm. Cold people, not that they don't like people. That's not a good way of putting it. Matter of fact, some of you are thinking right now, he's going to talk bad about me, and I'm not that way. I like people. And I know you do, but cold people just would rather not be touched. My wife got a shirt. You'll see where she is on this spectrum. She's got one of those shirts that says, "Ew, people." She worked at the front desk at the school, y'all. Is that who you want at the front desk of the school? She even has one shirt, and I don't remember, her friend probably got it for her, but it said, "After this COVID thing is over, I still want some of you to stay away." It actually may have said, "I still want most of you to stay away." And that's what I mean. She's not a cold person, but she's just not the people person. And so depending on whether you think you're fast, slow, warm, cold, that's where you're going to gravitate to these particular animals, and that's where we're going to put you. The fast, warm animals are the monkeys. Now, the psychologists have a name for that. That's called the sanguine temperament, and it's got all these different official terms. But I do like the description as a monkey, because these are monkeys. I don't know. When you think about a monkey, monkeys are active, and monkeys are hugging. And if you're one of these fast, warm monkeys, then yeah, you're a hugger, you're a talker, you're a storyteller, you're a people person. And when I think about it, that's kind of me, and that's kind of the way I am. And then there are people who think quickly, but they're not people. and they're kind of cold and a little bit standoffish, and we call these bears. And a bear is a good description of these people. And they don't like to mess around. They don't like to talk about it. If there's a job to get done, bears go, kill, eat, and they're done. And they don't want to discuss everything. And then if you're slow thinker and processor and you want to really think about things and consider things, but you are a people person and you love people, then we call you a deer. And those are your sensitive people. And it's not that they're slow of thought, but everything is, hey, slow down, and let's think about how's this going to affect everybody else. And you've got that person in your family who's a little bit, hey, let's just talk about this. We don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, and they're much sweeter. And then last, if you're slow and cold, you're an owl. And the owls are, matter of fact, usually you have the most trouble with the one on this chart that's opposite you. And I'm a monkey, and I have a big problem with owls because they don't want to hear me talk. They want to slow down and think about everything for a long time. They're not really concerned about people. I have a difficult time with owls. And so as we look at these, and you're in your mind, I hope, number one, I hope you've looked at yourself and where you think you're falling on that list. But number two, I want you to look at your spouse and where they fall on that little list of animals. And then think about your kids and realize that you've got, this zoo of animals in your house who react differently and think differently and handle things differently. I want to go through some of the things. Here are the strengths of a monkey. Monkey. If you're a monkey, and or if you've got a monkey in your family, their strengths are they are friendly, they are positive generally, they are pleasant, they are agreeable, they are loving, and they are spontaneous. Monkeys don't need plans. I hate plans. If you say, Judd, what are we doing next Thursday? I'm always saying, hey, I don't know. Ask me Thursday morning, and we'll figure out what we're going to do next Thursday. And especially if you've ever made a trip somewhere, there's always that one person who's got every day lined out. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to do. And the monkey's like, don't give me that list. Number one, I'll lose it before we get to the car, and I'll forget where it was. And that's your spontaneous person. And those are very positive traits, and you like these people. These are likable people. But there are some downsides to that. And some of the weaknesses are a little bit superficial. Haven't always thought things through. Everything's kind of surface. They're just going by the seat of their pants. They don't handle pain real well. They're not real patient with endurance or finishing a task. I don't know how many books I have in my house that I have started. And I've read the first chapter, and then I put it down, and I've got another book. Because this other book came up. Oh, this looks interesting too. Oh, someone gave me this book. I'm going to start reading this. And I never did finish the first book. And that's a problem. That can be a problem for me. These people are not very good at praying. I mean, to me, to sit down, to say, Judd, we're going to have 30 minutes of prayer right now. Oh, to a monkey, I'm going crazy. I want to get outside and climb a tree or do something, just to sit that long and talk about that much stuff. And we'd probably have to have a list to do that. And that would bother me. It's just they're not real good at praying or taking their time. And they do lack humility. If you know these people, these are show people. And they like being up front. And because of that, they struggle with a lack of humility. And so if you are one of these, if that describes you, or if one of your kids or your spouse is one of these, some things you need to work on. I think the two biggest things, especially maybe in my own life, is number one, it's just humility. Just Just think of others. Don't always be thinking about yourself. And number two, just be quiet. Too much talking. It's just too much talking, like I've done today. Very different. A lot of monkeys teach class because they like to hear themselves talk. And a lot of owls, they'll teach class, but they want to know 6 months ahead of time. And they want to pass out a sheet of paper with a detailed list of what they're going to say. And so monkeys are just way too comfortable talking. They need to be quiet. If that's you, let's just be quiet. We'll try to. The bear, some strengths, very practical. Very practical. They do like to take assessment of the situation, but they do it very quickly. Look at the situation, and then let's get it done. These are hard workers. That's a good quality in a bear. They are hard workers. They have very good endurance. They're going to go till they're done. And they're not going to take a break. No time to take a break. Let's get this done. They're oftentimes very good leaders. I'm thinking he won't watch this on YouTube. He won't take the time. But one of my friends is a head coach of our football team back home. And he is the ultimate bear. They love it when he comes to help with church projects. Because while the monkeys are all talking about what we're going to do and where the deck's going to be and how much fun we're going to have once we build it, and we're going to have parties on it, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, And then the owl is down there. Now wait, let's make a list of everyone who's here. Let's see our materials. Let's see what we're going to do. I mean, I can see this happening at half the things we do at our church. And then the bear is over there going, y'all quit talking, let's get this done. Let's get this moving. We're going to be here all day if we don't, and then you got to get it done. And then the deer comes in. Can we just not fight? Can we not all just get along? And can we not just, and that's and we've got your family has every one of these people in it. And these are positives of a bear. Now, what are some of the negatives of this? They're easily frustrated. As a matter of fact, the temperament in the psychology books for this is called choleric. These are the angry people. They're irritated. They're mad. They're irritated at you because you're taking too long. They're irritated at the monkey because he needs to shut up. They're irritated at the deer because I'm tired of how sensitive you are. They're so irritable that they're easily frustrated. And they're very stubborn. Some things, especially in a family dynamic, some things don't need to be just worked out immediately. Sometimes it does need to be talked about. And the bear just doesn't handle that well. Very stubborn, very impatient, can be arrogant. I know what to do. Let's do it. I know what to do. No, I don't need to hear your opinion. No, I don't need everyone else's opinion on this. I'm ready to go. I'm going to do it. It's what makes them a good leader, but it's also what makes them impatient, and they lack humility, and it really can be very frustrating for the people around them. If you've ever worked with a bear, it's very frustrating. Here's what they need to work on. If this is you, I ask you to work on this for your family and for your church. Learn to be patient. Learn to slow down. Learn to put others first. I know you know how to do it, and I know you can get it done. But just for my sake, let's just talk about it for just a second. Just for my sake. Just think of me for just a second. Now the deer, the strengths. What is the strength of a deer? Oh, they're sweet. They really are. They're kind. They're just more kind than you and I are. They really are thinking of other people. They're very generous. They're very contemplative. They're very long-suffering, and these are the people that are good at praying. It's just easier for them because they're thinking of other people. And I appreciate deers. I'm thinking about in some class settings, even at church, I'll give like a pop quiz at church or something. And the monkeys and the bears, they love it, and they're thriving on it. And the owl, no, you know what, you misspelled question number 4. You know, there's always that guy who's red and pointing out all your misspellings when you made it. And the deer, if you've ever seen a deer caught in headlights, you know, they don't want to take a test. They're worried. They're actually more worried that some people in class might get mad that you're having a pop quiz. And they'll say that. I'll have someone say that to me. Hey, Judd, what if we have some visitors? They may not like it if you give a pop quiz. And so they're very good at, but what's some of the negatives of that? They tend to be fearful people. They're glass half empty people. They're looking for bad. Even though they're thinking of other people, they're looking for bad in these situations. And because of that, they just tend to be pessimistic. And they can be kind of negative in a meeting. You know what? I'm not sure we should do that. That really bothers me that we would do that. It's really going to bother me if the Smiths are upset. You know, if this family gets mad about this or this person. And because they take this home with them, and it's part of their character, they tend to be depressed a lot. And if that's you, you may be that way. They can be a little bit dreamy. They tend to be artistic people. Here's what they need to work on. Number one, they just need to lighten up a little bit. Some people, I don't know if you know anyone like this, some people are just too serious. You know, not everything is the end of the world. And maybe just be a little bit more positive when you're dealing with people in your family. Here's the owl. Here's his strengths. You know, if this is a strength, you know, even as a monkey, I'm thinking these don't even sound like strengths to me. But they're calm. They're solemn. They're kind of common sense people. They're not offended easily because they're not really sure you've thought through what you said about them. Maybe you need to think about that a little bit more before you say that. Very measured in everything that they say. You know them as some of your class teachers are this way, very measured. And they demand very little. They really don't need much out of you. I'm thinking in my own life, my dad is the owl of all owls. He says nothing. I mean, he says nothing. He's very quiet. He's very measured. He does nothing quickly. And most times, I don't know if you think about this, most times, do you know what we tend to marry? Have you ever heard the phrase opposites? What's the next word? Attract. Yeah, we tend to marry the one that's opposite us. And you think about it, 2 monkeys couldn't get married. They'd be talking all the time. Nothing would ever get done. You know, you got to have someone who tells stories and someone who listens to stories. That's how things work. And so oftentimes you marry your opposite. Oftentimes you're attracted to the opposite animal. And after you get married, and you've been married for a while, then all of a sudden those opposite things are the very things that tend to drive people apart. And maybe even when you first met that opposite person, part of you was thinking, wow, here's someone that I can make more like me. And then after about 5-10 years, you realize this is not working. They're not turning in to someone more like me. But all of these strengths that my dad thinks are strengths, they drive me crazy. You know, for a while in our church, I think we had an eldership of owls. I think it was 6 owls. These guys tend to be elders. You know, one reason why? Elders are, one of the when you look at these qualifications in your Bible, it says blameless. You know, and I tell you, one guy who can stay out of trouble is that guy who never says a word. You know what I mean? We did a class one time on how many sins you can avoid if you never said a word. Think about that. A lot of the lying and anger and gossip and all of these foolish thoughts and all of these, if you just never said anything, you'd never But you'd also have very few friends. You'd never share the gospel. You'd never see, you can see, but they do avoid. Here's some of the ways I would see some of their negatives. They do come across as cold. I think they come across as boring. Some of these people in your church, they're kind of the boring people. They don't do much. You say, well, that's not fair, Judd. I'm not even saying they're not doing much because they're lazy. I'm just saying they just don't do much because they think it needs to be thought through better and further. And because of that, a lot of times they just won't show up for things that they're just not going to do. They can be a little bit defiant. They can be a little bit passive. And of course, their biggest problem, I think, it may just be me, is they're just too quiet. And it can be a positive or a negative. Here's what they need to work on. If that's you, if you're an Allen now, you need to communicate better, and you need to be more patient, especially with the monkeys who are so opposite you, and it bothers you. I remember for a while we had an elder. He's passed away now, and I was younger. I was a class teacher, and I had a pretty good sized class, and he came to my class a few times. And I just was curious because he didn't usually come to my class. I had a couple of elders who came to my class, but most of them, they went to kind of an older class. And he came to my class, and I just, like a monkey, I went to him. Hey, what'd you think? How was class? What'd you think? What'd you think? Let me think about it. Well, that just, what am I going to do with that? That crushed me. I just assumed, he hated it. He would have said something to me. He didn't say anything. Well, think about it. And then like a week later, he gave me a page printed from his computer with a list of things that he thought could have been said or should have been said. Well, as soon as I was halfway offended. What is this? What is this? If you didn't like it, just tell me. Why are you giving me this sheet of paper? Like I'm in trouble, Like I've been called to the principal's office or something. What is this? And can you see? I look back now. This was like 30 years ago. I look back now and I think, of course, he was an owl. And I'm a monkey. And he's doing things the way his character is built to do it. And he's not doing it out of meanness or anything. It's just the way he is. I don't know what he thought of me, but I hope he realized that, hey, I should realize this guy's a monkey and I need to cut him some slack and maybe not be real hard on him. So I hope, you look at this is all of our different animals, all their different strengths, all their different weaknesses. I don't have to say it, I'm going to, yeah. It goes without saying, which you usually follow up by saying it. And that is, you're not all one animal, are you? I'm a monkey with a little bit of, I've probably got a little deer in me too. I have very little owl, but I may have, you're going to go across the lines on some of these. I think the animals makes it easier to work with. The official psychological terms and the Myers-Briggs test are much more complicated, a lot of big words. I do think they're helpful, and I think they're interesting. But this is better, I think, if you're going to look at your family. These are the animals that Jeff Walling used in his original lesson. Incredibly effective. I remember on the way home, this was Tulsa, 82. I don't know how long ago that was. But I remember in the car on the way home, just our family, just the whole way home. What animal are you? What animal are you? And we talked about which animal were you. And then for the next 2 years, we'd have something happen and we'd start talking about, that was a monkey thing, or that was a bear thing, or that was a deer thing. And I think, I honestly believe it helped us dealing with each other and working out things with each other. And so I hope that's usable. I realize that's not really a Bible class, but I hope it's usable for you. Next time I went to we had a men's meeting with a bunch of guys, and as I looked around the room, I started realizing what they were. Because you honestly could, it's just personality type wise, if you know these people well, and at your church you do, and in your family you really do, you can start assigning animals to these people. And it affects, I think it really affected our meetings. I really think it affected the way I taught class, when I would teach class. And I would occasionally try to have a handout for class, because I knew some people in my class love handouts. They love being able to fill it in. I hate handouts. I hate notes. I hadn't even looked down at these stupid notes. I don't know why they're laying up here, but I just don't like having anything in front. I don't like anything limiting my ability to talk and just say stuff, stupid stuff. And I try to think about, especially the deer. We have an elder right now who is more deer than anyone I've ever met, and he's the sweetest man on the earth. And he's the best prayer that we have. And oftentimes when I have an idea in a meeting, or we'll come up with an idea and someone will say something, I actually gotten to where I'll ask him, hey, what do you think about it? Because I know his take is going to be worried more about the people than what I am. And I know that. I know he's going to come up with something I had not thought about, or a family that might be affected by that. And it changes, it really does change the way you do things. When I look at pictures of myself at different church events over the years, I realize it's so obvious what some people are, because I'm all monkey. And it really, there are some people at my church that cannot stand me because of that. And I know that, and that's okay. But it's just, it's something, and I look at my wife, my dear, sweet, beautiful wife, and I think, well, what did I marry? Because this matters. This matters in your marriage. I married a bear. And I know that about her. And so it really has changed the way, it's changed the way, and she don't want to talk about it. And she don't want to hug. She don't want that stuff. That's just not her. She loves me. I know she does. She's been with me a long time. I think she does, but that's just not something I need to, if I'm going to be offended every time she doesn't want to hold my hand, I'm going to be offended, because that's just not what she wants. She don't need it. And she knows I'm a monkey, and so sometimes she'll, all right, give me a hug, go sit down. And so I go back to my family picture, and I looked at my family. I think I just blanked myself out. There we go. And I looked at my family, and I tried to look at, I lost it here. Okay, this may not work. Oh no, it will work. I know it will. Maybe it won't. So if you realize, I did think, when I took this picture and thought about it, I think the dog is just a dog. I was thinking, is my dog a monkey, or is my dog? And then I thought, no, my dog's just kind of a dog. But all these kids, and you think about how this affects punishment. Can you punish your kids all the same? We learned real quick that's not going to work. One of our kids responds real well to, well, number one, hey, you do that again, I'm going to whip you. And they won't do it again. That's a very sensitive kid. The other one, you can just whip and whip and whip, and it does absolutely nothing. I remember my mom would sit me down and get on to me, and she would start talking, and I would think, oh my word, just whip me. She's going to talk for an hour, listing out everything I'd done wrong. And as a monkey, I was thinking, oh my word, just whip me, get it over with. And you know how these kids are different, and they react differently. So whether it's encouragement, you want to encourage a monkey, get him up in front of everyone. Get him up in front, have everybody clap for him. If it's an owl, I'm thinking about my dad. You want to honor my dad? Don't have him get up in front of everyone. That would destroy him. Instead, maybe give him some heartfelt gift that you've thought about and you put some time into and you wrote on, you have everyone sign. Don't give a monkey a card that everyone signed. They won't make it to the car with it. It's just not their personality. And so whether you're going to encourage them, whether you're going to discipline them, whether you're going to have a meeting with them, whether you're going to do all these different things, you be aware of yourself and you be aware of them. And then you'll have a better and more powerful family. That's our PZs. Let's pray and we'll be done. Dear God, we love you. Thank you so much for our time together. Thank you so much for your church. Thank you so much for your Son who died for every one of us. All these different parts in this room that make up your body, no two parts the same. And we just pray that we would be aware of what we tend towards, our attitudes, our temperaments, and that we won't blame those for the way we act, but instead we'll understand those and then we'll work on those through the power of your Spirit that changes us, that sanctifies us, that makes us better. Father, all these things we've talked about have some sinful tendencies, and we pray that you would help us as we fight and we struggle against those. But we know we lose, and we lose a lot. And so we're just so thankful that your perfect Son came as that perfect sacrifice, and he died for us. And so, Father, we just pray that you would bless our families and bless our church and make us more self-aware and others aware. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.